And I think there's really nothing quite so fascinating as the mind, and particularly with the conscious mind, but the subconscious mind, fascinating. The unconscious mind, speechless. Speechless. It's the collective, it's where we all join together, and at that point, spirituality, because we are spirit, and psychology must merge. We may not be aware of that, and certainly that doesn't mean that it's okay now all of a sudden for therapists to start talking about God. Therapists are not supposed to talk about God. They're supposed to leave all of that out, and I think it's a very strong, healthy boundary to have. I was blessed to work with a therapist for 2 years who understood the language, even though we didn't talk about it, understood the language. So I could go there and say, well, I'm really feeling, because I was in my second degree at the time, and I was in the underworld, and I was facing my worst fears and my deepest shadows. It was really nice to have somebody who understood the language, but that could speak to me in a psychotherapeutic way that I believe had some Jungian base to it. She was really the best. You know, I did a spell for my first and only real therapist. I did a spell for, and I cast for it, and I was given a gift certificate. Have I told you this story?
No.
Oh, I got a gift
This is
certificate
new.
for 9 massages for Christmas, which was a great gift. If you ever want to know what to get me a massage. And so I went to this place where the gift certificate came from, and I did like 8 of the massages. I had 1 left, and I think it was the last massage I went to. I had just done the spell maybe a week before, and the massage therapist was a witch. She was Wiccan, specifically, as I remember. And we started talking, and she's like, "Oh, you're a witch." We started. I said, "Yeah, well, I'm really." I don't know how it came out. You know how people can start rubbing your body, and the next thing you know, you're saying things you would have never said. I love
Did
that.
I say that in my out loud
Did that
voice?
come out of my mouth? And I said, "Yeah, I'm really looking. Oh, my lover's a therapist now, female." I ended up, to cut to the chase, with a lesbian Course in Miracles student married to a Wiccan therapist. It's pretty damn good. But absolutely, that understanding of interior motivation is, I think, what Jung offers us. Jung gave us the term the shadow, which is a word you will see smattered through the craft. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But the shadow, I think if you really want to understand, particularly the second degree, read Jung. Because the shadow is not something to be feared. It's something that must be embraced. Which, if you want to go back, that is in mythology. Is it Inanna and Ereshkigal? I think that whole thing where she goes into the underworld and has to embrace her shadow self. We see that over and over and over in our classical mythology about going into the underworld and retrieving something and bringing it back. Well, that underworld, in a sense, can be a symbol of the shadow, the disowned things that we just stuffed down.
So Jung didn't actually find it, but he translated it.
I think he translated it into a more scientific form. And I think, because another part of that question that Michelle puts out there is, faith and science. And I think that psychology, well, certainly is on the side of science, but that we're finding that even the word psyche, psychology, is another word for the soul. So there is something inherently spiritual, though it's not always focused on. And who knows what 100 years will bring. We are not at the end of the evolutionary chain here.
No, not for a long time.
It's not like we're...
Unless we're going to make some jump that we're not aware of.
And I think jumps like that are a long time coming. It's just like someone's career. Particularly in show business where they work and work and work and work and work and nobody knows them. And all of a sudden they're a star. Meanwhile, they've been working in the industry for 20 years.
Right. It's like, oh my God, what have they done before?
It's more like revelation. And I do think eventually we will find more of a meeting ground between spirituality and science. But hopefully nothing that will...
Hopefully sooner than later.
Well, but also I hope not in a way that we start... I mean, I'm glad we have EMF meters for, finding ghosts and things like that.
Yes.
I think that whole paranormal thing is interesting. It's not my cup of tea, as people are well aware it's not my cup of tea. But I think as soon as we start trying to build devices to test our chakras, we're in trouble. I think as soon as we start giving power to external forms that are really supposed to be governed on the inside, like an intuition meter, which is, by the way, what divination is. Tarot cards and pendulums and all that kind of stuff, it's really more psychology than spirituality. But yet it's a fine line.
Sometimes qualifying helps the mind that would not normally delve into it to give it some sort of credit.
Oh, sure.
You know,
but I also know people who, will pick out their toilet paper with a pendulum. I think that's a bit much. It's a bit extreme.
Do they use recycled paper? Does it stick? They're just yes, no.
Oh, I gotta
yes.
guess. Going through each orange in the thing. I mean, that just floats your boat. And that's the thing. As a witch, I'm like, hey, whatever works for you. But I'm finding the longer I'm on this path, I'm simplifying. Has to. And I said, when I read people for the first time, I said, look, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. I have to simplify it. Because if I make it so complex, I'm not going to be able to get the job done.
Right. And they're not going to understand.
They're not going to understand. And so I think, again, to just dovetail it and to end this question, is to really put out there that study Jung. I think he speaks more to witches than Freud does. Not that he ever probably thought about addressing witches at all. But I think in terms of our gods and our goddesses, they're archetypal.
Yeah.
You meet someone who's a Zeus. You can meet Zeus, at least that archetype in the world, male or female. You can meet Aphrodite walking down the street, particularly in Sayville, male or female. You can meet a Demeter. Just hang out around a schoolyard as the kids are let out and watch those minivans pull up. And you will see some Demeter archetypes. And they're not all hippie chicks either.
Contrary to belief.
You want to meet an Athena? Walk on Wall Street. You can watch those women. Not that men can't be Athenas. Again, these are gender neutral to an extent. But how I know that is through two wonderful books by Jean Shinoda Bolen, Gods in Every Man and Goddesses in Every Woman. She's a Jungian psychologist. The book is put out by Harper San Francisco. Two of the best books I've ever read on the subject. Cool?
Cool. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.